in Lebanon, we used to have a gentleman who would come to the house. And you know how today you have kind of disposable papers that you, let's say in a bathroom of a restaurant, you can take disposable papers to wipe your hands after washing them. Well, in those days, there used to be a service that which this guy would provide, but the roller was an actual tissue roller, so that, you know, there was one in the kitchen, for example. And so every week or so, he would come back to take off the one that we've used and then put a new one. So that was our sole connection to this gentleman. He was just a worker who provided the service. On a given day during the middle of the Civil War, where no one would be walking around or driving because everybody's getting butchered everywhere, there was a knock on our door. And usually in the context of the Lebanese Civil War, in the middle of the night, a knock on your door is usually not a good thing. And so I went to the door and I said, you know, who is it? And the gentleman says, oh, it's so-and-so. I'm the guy who changed it. Open the door. I have a gift for you guys. Now, at that point, there's the trajectory of how life could have gone. If I was dumb enough to open the door, things might have ended up very differently. I might have not been sitting here, you know, talking to you. And so I said, well, what is that you want? And he said, so he kind of progressively got more insistent. I'm here with some friends. We have a gift for you. Open the door. So then I got kind of chilled, went to see my mother to call her. She was in another part of the house. And then she came and there was more kind of insistence, open the door. Bottom line, we didn't. We called, so I'm going to say the word in Arabic and then I'll translate it. There used to be a police division called Satash. Satash means 16, which is like a division of internal police. The chances of them responding to a call in the middle of the Civil War would have been next to zero because, you know, I mean, for them to even try to get out would be too dangerous. So we call these folks saying that there are some men at, you know, at our door that seem suspicious. They answer, they come, and so now they all come in. The main guy who used to change our roles comes in, and the head policeman says, "What are you doing here?" So he says, "Oh, I'm the guy who changes them. We went up to the mountains today and we picked some pomegranates, and I've got some pomegranates in this basket." So the guy looks, and there were pomegranates. So the policeman looks at him and says, "You're coming here with other guys in the middle of massive fighting because you want to give them pomegranates in the middle of the night?" He goes, "If I catch you here again, you know, there'll be trouble, you'll be in trouble, whatever." So then the guy, before they're escorted out, says, "You know, I'll be back for you." And we left, and as I'm saying this, I've said it a million times, I've written about it in the book, I'm getting you know, goosebumps, because we ended up leaving Lebanon before he would come back and resume his visit. And so that's the reality that you face in a place like a civil war, where every second of every day there is death awaiting you. Now, I think what would have happened there, at the very least, it probably would have been sexual assault, could have been executed, who knows. I mean, certainly at least those things. But death awaited every other minute of every day. So for example, there was a place where I would go out to play, and I actually talk about this in my next book, where I talk about the importance of play to the human condition, that even in the most dire circumstances, like the Holocaust, like the Lebanese Civil War, you have to instantiate your desire to play. So I was a kid, and so my parents would tell me, if you're going to play in a particular area, especially like when there wasn't a lot of fighting, don't cross a particular line, because the eyesight of that, if you cross that line, is where the snipers take out everybody. So I literally would have this imaginary line that I knew, because the buildings I'd be covered if I'm here, but once you pass that, your head is off. And you know, they just shot everybody, I mean, indiscriminately. So that would have been another case. Another example would be, and of course I've got a million of these. Some of these didn't even make it to the parasitic mind, so you're getting exclusive footage here. Another thing that we learned how to react to is when there's shelling, there is like a whistle signature that happens, an auditory signal. Depending on how, sort of you learning that signal, it either made you rush and kind of hide because that meant it was coming very close, because the shelling is indiscriminate, right? It's coming from all directions. So imagine that one of the skills that you learn as part of your daily life is to kind of hear this whistle that either says, all hands on deck, or don't worry, it's 3 streets away, you don't have to worry about it. One day, my mother and sister were heading off to, usually there'd be a ceasefire from intense fighting. Actually, that's when a lot of people, civilians, would die, because the fighters wouldn't really honor the ceasefires. And so people would come out to get replenishments, like to get water, to get food, to get bread. So there was this long bread line at a bakery next to our house. And for whatever reason, my mother and sister had been delayed in going to the place. So this long line, a car had passed by and just mowed down everybody. So then they could have, had they left 5 minutes earlier, they would have been part of the people who were mowed down. So that was the daily reality. One other source of imminent danger was you couldn't really travel anywhere because there'd be these roadblocks, these ad hoc roadblocks that are set up everywhere in the city, where the militiamen, depending who the militia were, they would ask you for, in Arabic the term is hawiyya. Hawiyya is it means like an internal ID card that everybody carries. It's like a passport, but that you carry inside the country. And what's written on that thing is, okay, your name and so on, but very prominently is what your religion is. Because again, in Lebanon, everything is viewed through not just in Lebanon, in the Middle East, everything is viewed through the prism of your religious group. And so in our case, so the Arabic word for Jewish is Yehudi, but it was written Israeli. Israeli means Israelite. So it even made it more animus against you, more hatred against you, because it wasn't just that you were Lebanese but just happened to be Jewish. They put Israelite because then that even cues that you're somehow not Lebanese, you're Israeli, which of course we weren't. We're Lebanese. Our mother tongue is Arabic. We've been in Arabic countries forever. So there weren't many roadblocks that we would be stopped at where we were going to clear that roadblock. Basically, it would be a bullet in your head. Now, usually it was the Christians and the Muslims that were killing each other off because they were the two dominant groups in Lebanon. And then they had several factions within each of these groups. Now, the Jews were an unbelievably tiny minority, in the order of, several hundred, if not up to 1,000 at the time we were there, I think. So we couldn't even get into a car to go anywhere, because if at any moment some militiamen stopped you and said, show us your papers, we're dead. So it was a very harrowing childhood, but luckily we got out.
As many of you know, we are independent creators and filmmakers, but there is a massive attack on us right now. Traditional media over the last few years has started to slowly die. They are no longer the independent voice that you first thought they were. That's why we've created Mulligan Brothers Patreon. We've built something special for our most dedicated supporters, and I want to break it down for you real quick. The supporter tier gets you ad-free early access to both video and audio versions of Mulligan Brothers interviews 24 hours before it goes public. The executive tier gets you everything that a supporter tier gets, plus more. Exclusive interviews and behind the scenes content, walk and talks, daily routines, unreleased interviews, the stuff that you don't see anywhere else. And finally, the executive producer tier. Everything from the supporter tier and the executive tier, plus exclusive perks. Access to our treatment packages. Be the first to see which guests are coming up and get insight into the topics we'll be discussing before anyone else. And you'll even get an executive producer credit on every single documentary that we make. So if you've ever wanted to support the Mulligan Brothers mission of inspiring change so we can go around the world and get these stories that nobody else will, this is exactly how you do it. Go to patreon.com/Mulligan Brothers or click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Join the community and help us inspire change.